So today we're starting. First of all, welcome to everybody. Today is the fourth. Am I correct? The fourth of Sivan, and we are starting. Basically, what's interesting about this introduction is that the introduction to Tanya, which is for the second book of Tanya, is actually the introduction to the first book. In fact, it's a very, very important introduction because what it does is it summarizes basically the entire Tanya, at least the first two books of the Tanya, at least in a certain sense, even the third book. It's a very, 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 very succinct and powerful and tremendously content-packed summary. And what this does is for some reason, the second book of the Tanya was meant to be studied as the first book of the Tanya. In fact, when you study the Tanya, you're meant to study the second book and then study the first book. The reason for this is because obviously the Tanya is a book of meditations to help us understand how to love Hashem and fear Hashem. And these meditations are specific, or I shouldn't say specific, many of them circle around the second book of Tanya, which is the idea of the Yichud Hashem, how the Eibishter is really everything is coming from Hashem, and everything is from the energy. There's the energy of Mamale, Hashem fills everything, the energy of Soviv, how Hashem is beyond everything, and Kulei Kamei, Kulei Mamash Chashav, how everything is like nothing. All the universes, our universe is like a dot compared to the universe above it, which is a dot, which is a dot. And even that dot is like nothing compared to Hashem. So we understand that Hashem's infinity makes everything else, even things that seem infinite, so vast, but anything that has any type of limitation compared to infinity is nothing, right? If you took all the money in the world that ever was, is, and will be compared to infinite, it's still nothing because it's a limitation. It's like a one versus infinite money because it's just, you can never compare that which has no limit to that which has a limit. So having this understanding of the greatness of Hashem really is the first step in the appreciation of Hashem. And as we'll see in various meditations, okay, so I'm just going to read because it's so kind of dense with information. There's no other way to do it but to read the material and to kind of translate the content. And without further ado, so Likutei Amarim Chelek Sheni. So we know that Tanya is a collection of sayings. They are the sayings primarily of the Baal Shem Tov, of the Magid, and the Shalah and the Maharal of Prague. So this is what the Tanya is based on. It's interesting. I was at the Shalah and I opened his Sefer and it was amazing. It was like pure Chassidus. It was really interesting to see. And also, you look at the style of the Shalah, the style of Maharal is very similar to the style of Chassidus. Very interesting. So this introduction is called Chinuch Katan. Why is it called Chinuch Katan? I don't know. A small education. I don't know. Melukim Mipi Svarim. The Tanya is collected from Svarim. Like we said, Shnei Luchas Abris and the Maharal of Prague. Mipi Seifrim Kedosh Elyon. Seifrim are scribes. That probably refers to the Baal Shem Tov, the Magid. Nishmos and Eden. The souls are in heaven. Miyusid al Parsha Shon Shel Kishma. So it's interesting because in the introduction to the Tanya, he says the Tanya is based on that it's very, very easy in a way. It's very straightforward to do it. Do you have an iPhone by any chance or a regular phone? No. Okay, it's very straightforward, and you can do it here. He says because it's about Yichud Hashem. Yichud Hashem is based on the first parsha. Now, what's the first parsha of Shema? It's Shema Yisrael. And Bar Shem Kved Malchus Leilim V'ad. That refers to Yichudi Allah. That's what this whole next 12 chapters are about. Yichudi Allah and Yichud Tata. How Hashem's Yichud will go into greater detail. How He has a higher level unity and a lower level unity with this world. He's connected this world on a higher level and a lower level. And that refers to Shema Yisrael. Of course, the mitzvah, we know there's a mitzvah, a lot of people are not aware of it. There's not only a mitzvah of Amunas Hashem, to have faith in Hashem, but there's also a mitzvah of Achdus Hashem. And Achdus Hashem is an interesting mitzvah. There are various interpretations, but the basic Hasidic interpretation is that there is nothing but Hashem. Right? So Amunas Hashem, to believe in God, means that there's a God and there's me, right? And there's a table. And I believe that God made me and He made the table and He's still in charge of me and the table. Achdus Hashem means that there is only God. That's the difference, right? The famous story is a chassid once said to Misnagid, I envy you because you think about God all day and I think about me all day. So what was the joke? The joke was that you know that you exist. So you're thinking about, does God exist? Does He not exist? I know that the only reality is God. So I'm wondering, do I exist? So that's because in the real contemplation of reality, all that exists is Hashem. So the question then is, how is there anything but Hashem? How do you have another reality? So this is the Vart. Then
somehow Hashem wants it.
Right, exactly. As the Tanya will explain to us, it's the concealment. Hashem conceals Himself. Okay. So Chanoich L'nar al Pi Darkoi, educate a young person according to his way. Gam ki yaskin lo yosem mimenu. Even when he gets older, he won't go away from this way. So this is a very famous idea of King Solomon, that education has to go according to the I guess mentality, the mentality of the student. It has to go according to the way of the student, which is a big problem in education today. It's a cookie cutter, because real education is about growing a person, helping a person grow. But what is secular education? It's taking the stamp. I'm going to stamp everybody with the stamp. Not only that, it's a very ridiculous thing, because somewhere along the line they decided that unless you get a college degree, and now you can't even get a BA, you have to have a master's. Waste 8 years studying something that nobody understands anyway, and then you can get certified. I spoke to the psychologist, said everything I learned only after college, right? So then the whole thing is a corrupt, foolish system that's just self-serving itself, and it's and many people are not academics, and especially today, there are kids that they say, listen, I have to listen to this teacher on my little phone. I have infinite more information than this teacher. What am I doing here? So you have bright kids. They don't understand why they're even in school in the first place, and they actually write. Because in Yiddishkeit, education is how to be a mensch. Everything of Judaism is how to be a mensch. So how to be a mensch, I don't care what you know. You need to know how to be a mensch. So Torah is telling you how to control yourself. It's important education. Anything a child learns in yeshiva is worthwhile. But all the secular education, almost every bit of it, maybe a little bit of math, a little bit of English, is just useless. What difference does it make?
There is a use for it.
Huh?
There is a use for it.
What?
So you can help your children with their homework.
Yeah, so you can help your children, right? As
Otherwise, you look like an idiot.
A friend of mine told me that his math teacher says, now the reason you need to know this answer is that if you get accosted at 3 a.m. in the middle of the street in Louisville, and the guy holds you up with a gun and says, what is the answer to this question? You'll know the answer.
The money or your
Right.
wife.
Right. So the point is that if you have to look at the truth of education, it boils down to what Yiddishkeit teaches. It's about teaching the Torah. It's about teaching right from wrong. And of course, for a person needs to know Parnasa, any event, these jobs are shifting so quickly. Just go somewhere in the future, you'll just say, okay, what's the next job? How do I learn it? Next case, you know what I mean?
At the highest levels of education, though, Jewish tradition is used. When they learn at Oxford, or they learn...
Okay, so let's continue.
It's part of the tradition. I was just going to say that Henry VIII...
Okay, so let's continue. So, Yeshikayach for that insight. So the Alter Rebbe says like this, Mashma. So, Hine midiksiv al pi darkoi mash shene derech ha'emes. So we're saying that educate a child according to his way, so it means that it's his way. It's not exactly the absolute truth. So what's going to be so great that he's going to get older? He won't go away from this way. On the contrary, you want him to advance in truth. You don't want a child just to be educated on getting candies to do the right thing. It's known that the source of serving Hashem is fear and love of Hashem. Fear of Hashem is the source of Sur Merah, of staying away from all that's wrong. Right? Why? Because when a person has a fear, the nature of fear is that you acquiesce. When you're afraid of someone, you basically don't do what would make them upset. So it's our fear of Hashem that would keep us doing not transgressing the Avedas. And when you love someone, you do things that make them happy. And what is the Aseh Toiv? These are the mitzvahs, the positive commandments of Hashem, the things to do. So this is the real reason why a person would serve Hashem, because he has Yiras Hashem. He has Ava, would bring you to do in a loving way the will of Hashem. B'kiyum kol mitzvahs essay, to do all the mitzvahs, whether it's the rabbis, the mitzvahs of Hashem, obviously, or the mitzvahs that the rabbis, because that's also what Hashem wants us to do. As it will be explained in its place, which is both in chapter 4 and chapter 41, the Alter Rebbe discusses this concept that the doing of mitzvah, having love of Hashem leads you to the mitzvah saseh, and having fear of Hashem leads you away from the mitzvah saseh. Then the Alter Rebbe says, "Mitzvahs hachinuch gam came mitzvah saseh." Educating a child is also a mitzvah saseh. As it says in Orach Chaim Siman Shemen Gimel, we're also learning these laws in the Rambam today. The law of being mechanech your child, because the child obviously doesn't have a mitzvah of chinuch, so it's the parents' job to kind of train them. Eventually, they have to do it on their own, but we have to try to train them. Hine ba'ava ksiv b'seif Parshas Eikev. In Ava, it says in the end of Parshas Eikev, Asher anoichi mitzava eschem la'asoyse la'avas Hashem. I think we say that in Shema every day, that I command you to do it, la'avas Hashem. So this is a classic question of the Alter Rebbe. So we have to understand, Eich shayach lashon asiya gabe ava shebalev. How can we call how can we call Ava in a way of Asiya? I'm commanding you to love. It doesn't make much sense to command someone to love. The idea is there are two types of love. One type of love is what we call koloisa nefesh. Your soul is kind of it's a level of koloisa nefesh, meaning you're willing to actually, you just like want Hashem so much. It's almost like the soul is ready to expire. It doesn't want anything of the physical. It just seeks Hashem beyond anything. Now, this type of a love, he's going to go on to say, is not a normal kind of a love. Now, a normal human being, first of all, loves himself. And as an extension of his love for himself, he has other things. Oh, because you're nice to me, I love you. Or because you're a part of my family, I love you. And even the love for Hashem has something to do with me in a way, as we'll soon see. But this is, no, you just want it. It's like such a crazy love that the soul wants to leave the body. It's very interesting that people that have had near-death experiences, the power of that love that they feel from Hashem at that moment is so great. All you know is this body in this world. People are like ready to go. There are times I heard that people were kind of ready to go, but their mother came to them like, "Go back. What are you doing?" Because it's like, I know. Anyway, so long story short, Acheninhu Dieshnei Mine Avas Hashem. So there are two types of love for Hashem. Ha'achas hi kloisa nefesh b'tiva beira. One is a kloisa nefesh to Hashem. It's like automatic, and the soul just wants to go with her nature. Because remember, where does the soul come from? The soul is part of Hashem. It's like a child that just has this tremendous love for his parents. It's kind of a love that we discussed in the Tanya, that he's willing to give up his life for his parents. So this child truly is like this, a little child at home, the son, he's ready to give up all his toys when his father comes because he knows that's where he comes from. This is daddy. So we have this tremendous love for our father. So where does this love come from? The love is a love which is a tremendously it's like an inborn nature. Because I know this is my parent and I have this love, it's tremendous, tremendous love for the parent. It's also the soul. What is the nature of the soul? The nature of the soul is basically, in a way, knowledge, is understanding. The lower the universes get, the less knowledge we have. We think we have knowledge, but really we have much more. In this world, we live more experiential, almost an emotional reality. The higher worlds, it's much more basically truth. And what is the truth of life? That there's only Hashem. And everything else is just a creation of Hashem. So when you are aware of that truth, it's part of why the angels have such a love for Hashem, because they know that Hashem is their source. We're not aware, actually, it's very interesting. Hashem made us in such a way that we don't feel Hashem as our source. We feel ourselves, I exist. If you ask me, what makes you exist? So I'll say, yeah, maybe Hashem, but what do you feel makes you exist? What do you mean, I exist? In fact, the Jew feels it more than anyone else. Everyone else might have a certain feeling that they come, but because we come literally from Hashem and there's nothing that precedes Hashem, we truly feel like we are our own existence. We have this powerful feeling. So, the idea is that the neshama above, the Alter Rebbe once asked somebody, something like, what is Hashem? So he wasn't going to tell the Alter Rebbe what is Hashem. In fact, it's interesting. It just reminded me of another story. There was a couple, and for whatever reason, she was very unhappy with the marriage, and she wanted to get divorced. But her father was a chassid Alter Rebbe, so she went to Alter Rebbe. Alter Rebbe said, no, they have to remain married. And again, she was unhappy. And again, she goes to Alter Rebbe, and Alter Rebbe says, no, they have to remain married. A third time, she says to her father, I want to get divorced. And he's like, I'm going to Alter Rebbe. She says, what's Alter Rebbe? A general? He's giving me orders? And they didn't, and she got divorced anyway. And she had some reason as well. He was a bit of a slouch, this guy. Anyway, she got remarried, a very nice guy, a chashuva guy, but this guy actually had kids. But she had, for some reason, she wasn't blessed with children. So she pestered her husband, go to the Alter Rebbe, get a bracha. So he comes to the Alter Rebbe for a bracha. The Alter Rebbe said, what, am I a general? I could just give children? And he didn't understand. That's how a Rebbe talks. And then when he came home and she heard this, she chapped what happened. So that's why in life, sometimes people try to escape the reality. But you never know.
Well, this was the problem we had with Timnah. Timnah wanted to be part of Abraham's.
Okay, so getting back to the subject at hand, we're talking about, so the Alter Rebbe said to this guy, what is Hashem? Now, he wasn't going to say what Hashem is, and then he said, what is a neshama? What is this Jewish soul? Of course, he wasn't going to tell the Alter Rebbe. So Alter Rebbe said, Hashem is hu levadei hu ve'in zelasu. There's only Hashem, and there's no other existence. So, from the perspective of Hashem, like, I'll give you an example. Imagine the whole universe is me and this computer program that I made. So what exists? Me, not the computer program, because I just made the program. And particularly if I'm the computer that's generating the program every second, all that exists is me. The program is a choice that I'm choosing at this moment. Then from the perspective of the program, it's a question if the program is aware or not aware. It says, what is a neshama? The neshama is one that can understand that. And that's why there's a difference between Yidden and non-Jews. Because a Yid has a mitzvah, we're talking about Yichud Hashem, a Yid has a mitzvah to understand this. A Gentile doesn't have a mitzvah. It's the whole thing of the source of the soul. Even though they understand that there's a greatness of God, but they'll always understand I exist too. There's God and me. And so therefore their mitzvah is what we call shituf. They can have really called delikaya, various different things. But the idea of only Hashem, this is a mitzvah on the Yid, because the Yid's neshama is sourced in Hashem, so you can conceive of this very esoteric concept. So the neshama knows this. So what does the neshama want? It just wants Hashem because he knows the reality. So the neshama is here. In fact, it's very painful for the neshama to be in this world where people will transgress. Al Shem Tov says that sometimes a spark, a neshama from Atzilus will come into this world and it will just be here to feel it feels like I don't know, pain or shame of how people are not honoring Hashem. It's like for the neshama, every night the neshama goes to Shemayim and it complains to Hashem. It's like, get me out of here. I can't handle this prison. It's a bad cry. I think I once heard that cry. It's an extraordinary cry. The neshama cries to Hashem. And in any event, so we're talking about this idea that the person has tremendous yearning. The soul has this yearning. Now, presumably, I don't know about you, but I don't feel this yearning, right? I love God, but I don't have this yearning to aspire to God. So who has this kind of a yearning, this tremendous type of love? So Alter Rebbe explains, this comes kasher tizgaber nefesh hasichlis ala choimer v'sashpileyu v'sachniyeu tachtel. So we know, and this is a very interesting thing to know, the thing about a soul is very much connected to desires. So for example, what are you connected to? You're connected basically to your desires. And how did you get those desires in the first place? So either you connected to it, some desires we have naturally, subconsciously, other desires we have an innate instinct for pleasure. For example, nobody's born liking, I don't know, steak. Yet, if you eat a steak, however chemically it happens, it makes you feel good. So you can want to eat a second steak, right? So this becomes a desire that you have. Fine. So the point is that all these desires start to conflict with each other. If a person had no physical desires whatsoever, and he had spiritual desires, so his whole soul would be for the spirit. There are certain people that are very spiritual, they're born very holy, they're just innately connected to very high spirituality. Other people are the opposite. They have very strong physicality and they're innately connected to, the physical. And then there's people in between, some spiritual, little physical, things like this. So in order for the spiritual desire to be very, very powerful, a person has to have that their physical desire isn't going to be strong either. Simple example is, if you and your wife want to go on vacation, wife says, let's go to California, you say, let's go to Hawaii, right? And you take her into account, she takes you. So it like balances the desire, it balances it out. Certainly if you yourself want to have maybe Hawaii, so each one gets a little bit minimized by the other. So if a person is truly intellectual and truly understands that this world is nothing, and the desires for a steak is just a joke because it's going to come, it's going to go, it's not a big deal. So then they're really able to feel the love for Hashem because their spiritual is not being blocked by a physical desire. So when the physical desires are minimized, or even the person can despise them, then the spiritual desires go high. That's why it says that the world exists on the Hevel Tinoikisha Beis Rabam, the breath of the children. Like right over here, you got a yeshiva, whole bunch of children learning Torah. This keeps the world going.
It's the whole reason that the world exists.
Yeah. Why? What's so great about them? It's very interesting because one of the things is that when does the sexual desire kick in? When the hormones kick in, puberty, 13, whatever. So these children that are pure, they don't even have that desire. All they have is spiritual. Children are very, very pure. Their desires are very holy. So they don't have anything blocking. Everything they do is very pure. There's no other desires in their soul but for Hashem. You look at the kids here, very pure children. Obviously, people get a little older than these desires. Of course, Baruch Hashem, the Yetzer Hara became pocket-sized now. So now it becomes even more complicated because people, God forbid, they indulge. And once they indulge, it becomes an addiction. It becomes very difficult, which is part of the journey of a soul because Hashem wants us to overcome it. And everybody has their journey. Look, Hashem gave us time too. Sometimes it's difficult, but people have to go through what they have to go through to realize that this is not worth it. It's not a simple process. In any event. So what happens is that automatically when the physical desires are low, now the spiritual desires go high. We saw now we have this tremendous joy in Hashem who created, or the soul has its joy in God, her maker. She's like the child with her father. She's just so happy. And she has an extraordinary pleasure in God. And this, of course, is a very big thing, pleasure, right? So she takes the pleasure of this unity. It's a very great pleasure and in fact, pleasure and love are basically the same thing because love creates pleasure. And when a person has this kind of love and pleasure for Hashem, that's why the soul seeks Hashem so much, because it has such a great pleasure. Also, it understands Hashem so well, or to whatever a soul can understand. So therefore, it truly appreciates. What do we understand? We're like behemoths. We don't understand anything. So how much do we appreciate? But the soul that understands on the highest level, it's like, wow, Hashem is with me. It's like it's extraordinary. The closer you get to Hashem, in fact, the humbler you become, because the closer you get to light, the more brilliant the light becomes, the more hot it becomes, the more humble you become. So in a way, we're distant, and that's why we can have these kind of relationships. But the soul that's really, in a way, close, has just like this, like klois hanefesh. It doesn't even want to exist. It just wants the source. So who has such a love? I'm seeing you got such a love. Working on it. The people that have this kind of love, they are called tzaddikim. Like it says, Simchu tzaddikim v'havaya, tzaddikim rejoice in Hashem. But not every single person has such a love, merits such a love. For such a love, you have to have gotten rid of all these other lusts and all these other desires. A person also has to have a lot of Torah and good deeds. To merit a higher soul. This soul is higher than the level of Ruach v'Nefesh. In other words, to be perfectly honest, I don't really get this whole story, but there are 5 levels to the soul. There's Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chai, Yechid, and it seems like they split. You can have one level and another level, you get a level. I don't exactly know how the whole system works. But basically, the level of Neshama is the level of intellect. Nefesh is more the action level. Ruach is emotion level. And Neshama is intellect level. So this is based, where do you see the greatness of Hashem? And in a way, the foolishness of the pleasures of this world is you have to have a good intellect. Because if your intellect isn't good, then what are you attracted to? Whatever you experience. It's your experiences become very, very important. That's why Avram Avinu was able to discover God at 3 years old and give up his life for him, because his intellect was so strong, he was able to overcome the physical. So this person has a very high neshama, or he's given a high neshama, which is why he can experience this kind of a knowledge. And this is, are you guys familiar with the Sefer Reishis Chachma? Reishis Chachma is a very important Sefer. In fact, the Talmidim of the Alter Rebbe had to know Reishis Chachma by heart before they came to study from the Alter Rebbe. Reishis Chachma was written by Reb Chaim Vidash, who I think was either a Talmud of the Ramak or maybe even a teacher of the Ramak. So he was a very, very great tzaddik and a makubal, and he kind of created a Shulchan Aruch out of Kabbalah. So what Reishis Chachma does is it goes through Kabbalah and it shows you the shows you how to practice your, if you want to call it your Judaism. Hello, how are you? What are you teaching?
Right now.
Right now, we'll be out in a moment. Okay. It shows you how to practice your Judaism. How the Kabbalah teaches you whatever, washing your eyes, different things, etc., etc. Okay. Let's do this quickly then. The second is the love that every person can achieve on their own. So you don't have to have a big neshama, you don't have to be a big tzaddik. You and me right now could do this because she's in hativ. But the libo, when you think deeply in the depths of your heart, with things that inspire love. There are things that will get you to love, feel love. L'Hashem, to God, belev kol Yisrael, in the heart of every Jew, hein derech klal, whether it's a general way, and he mentions a couple of loves. Now we had a discussion of going through some chapters of Tanya, so we discussed this already. But basically, ki hu chayenu, that he is our life, and this is explained in chapter 44. So when you understand that Hashem is literally your life force, therefore you'll love him because he is you. Just like you like your own soul, so also in your life, so also you should love Hashem because he is your soul. And everybody can have that because we love ourselves, so we can love Hashem. Without Hashem, you don't exist for a minute. He is your soul, he is your life force. Is literally your life. Like it says in the Zohar and the Pasuk. Nafshi ivesicha, I love my own soul, I love my own life, Hashem is my own life. Vehein derech prat, and also in a specific way, when you'll understand about the greatness of Hashem in a more specific way. Kasher yuchel, say specifically as your mind can handle, meaning knowing how Hashem makes every single thing, every single moment. Think about the greatness of Hashem. And even that is nothing compared to who he is, because that's only what our little minds can comprehend. Imagine what they can't comprehend. So now you understand. It's beyond understanding. Then think about how kind he is, how much he must love him. Us, because he's so great. Later, the Messiah, he went down to Egypt, the pit of the earth. Take our soul out of the iron crucible, such a hell. Sitra Achra, which was the other side, the horrific clip of Rahman, to do what? The Karvenu love, to love us. Davkenu b'shmoi mamish, and to make us one with his name, that he attached himself to me and you. V'hu shmai echad, and he is one. Okay, so this is where Tanya finishes today. Obviously, we're going to go in more details, but the essence is, once we can think about his tremendous love. So these are contemplations that everybody can have, as we're going to discuss. There's the love that can be born from contemplating, and then there are higher and higher levels. And he's going to say, in the end, it all begins with this original level, the original love that we have. And even though when you go higher, this original love remains. And that's why even when you're older, it's okay to not go away, because not you're losing this original love. This original love is good. You're just getting to higher and higher levels. L'chaim v'levracha.